August 22nd, 2025. August 22nd, 2025, at the East-West Boulevard Light Rail Station on the Lynx Blue Line in Charlotte, North Carolina, Iryna Zarutska was stabbed brutally to death by a black man, completely unprovoked. Who was this woman? Who was the killer? Why did this happen? What was the motive? How could this have been prevented? My name is Peter Wiggin, and today I want to break down the recent murder case of Iryna Zarutska. I want to give you the history of her, of the killer, and some other things, some other tangential political and social sentiment that has been flared up on the internet as of recent since this happened. My name is Peter Wiggin. If you enjoy these videos, if you want the up-to-date latest news on things like this, be sure to leave a like, be sure to subscribe, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Let me know where you fall on this issue. Let me know what things you know that I didn't mention in here. So let's get started. Who was Iryna Zarutska? Iryna Zarutska was a 23-year-old Ukrainian artist that fled her birthplace of Kyiv, Ukraine, with her family back in 2022 after the Russian invasion. Now, whatever you think about the Russian invasion, or whatever side you pick, if you see it as a game show with sides, Ukraine and Russia are at war, and there are a lot of civilians, innocent civilians, that have been affected. And a bunch have came to America seeking solace, seeking safety, seeing America as a city upon a hill that will help them make new lives despite their destitute circumstances. And Iryna Zarutska and her family were some of those people. And so, who was the killer? We have a bit of the background on Iryna. Actually, I've been looking, I've been studying, I've been researching as to some more details regarding her life, her upbringing, her family, but I couldn't really find anything. They've been pretty quiet. They released an obituary online. They have a GoFundMe. If you want to go look that up, please do. I might, if I can find it, I'll leave a link in the description below. But all I could really find was a statement about the obituary, and it was outlining her as an artist and a wonderful person, somebody that loved to be around family, and it's very tragic reading that. But who was the killer? Who was the person that seemingly stabbed Iryna unprovoked on this train? His name was 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr. And what happened was, you've probably seen the video by now. I can't show this video on YouTube. I don't want to show this video on YouTube. It's pretty horrific. It will leave you awake at night with a lot of questions regarding your own safety, regarding your own mortality. But pretty much what happened in this video, if you haven't seen it, I'll just describe it to you right now. Iryna Zarutska is sitting alone on this train, except there is one other individual behind her. It's this black man. It's DeCarlos Brown Jr. And seemingly unprovoked, seemingly out of nowhere, he unflips a small pocket knife and proceeds to stab her 3 times, one time in the neck, and then walks off of the train, leaving Iryna to die on the train alone. Who is this DeCarlos Brown Jr.? He was a 34-year-old man who was caught train fare hopping at the time. So he didn't even have a ticket to be on that train. He was on that train illegally. He wasn't supposed to be on that train or anywhere near that train. And I was researching parts of his background, and although a bunch of different media outlets have begun to promulgate this story, they began to talk about it. There was a couple days in which no, especially left-wing media outlets, were mentioning this at all, whatsoever. Not a single word, not a single peep. But we've been able to get a bit more information about this person, who he is, and we find out that he's been arrested over a dozen times for things such as larceny, things such as breaking and entering. And he actually, believe it or not, I know you can believe it after seeing that video or hearing my description of the video, he spent 8 years in prison for robbery with a dangerous weapon. And so that's the background on this DeCarlos Brown Jr., an upstanding member of society, somebody that, through the luck of the devil, has been able to evade, he was in jail for a couple years, but evade further prosecution and has been continued to be let out by district attorneys and by judges in the area. And on this fateful day of August 22nd, 2025, he found himself sitting behind Iryna Zarutska. And we still have no idea on what the motive was, but he stood up and he proceeded to brutally murder her in cold blood, and walk off the train, and he was eventually arrested upon leaving the train and charged with first-degree murder. And so my first question, your question that you may have too, is why, if this happened on August 22nd, why is it only starting to become a big thing circulating around the internet? So for a couple days, they needed the city, that is Charlotte, North Carolina, needed to review the footage. They needed to review the situation to make sure that the Charlotte area transit system was actually following correct protocol. I know it's one of those bureaucratic things. But in the sake of transparency, on September 5th, actually, this video was released for the first time. And that's actually when I saw it, September 5th. And so I was wondering, too, like, why wasn't this released before? It was actually the Charlotte area transit system who released the video on the 5th. And over a couple days after that, it's the 8th at the time of this recording. So over the course of the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th, this video has been making rounds on social media. People have been outraged about it. But media, as I said before, media outlets, including media outlets like Fox News, if I am recalling correctly, didn't cover this story. Donald Trump didn't have a word on this story. And just over the past couple of hours, if you search up this story right now on Google, you will have each article coming up from the BBC, from ABC News, from NBC, just having been written and published maybe 5, 6, 7 hours ago, at least when I was researching this. So information is just starting to come out. More information may come out. If there is any information that drops that I didn't mention in this video, I will be sure to make an update video letting you know what that exactly is. But first off, I wanted to share a quick statement, actually, from the White House X account itself. And so the White House Twitter account, X account, posted this quote given by Donald Trump, the President of the United States, regarding the situation. And it says, "I have seen the horrific video of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee who came to America to escape the vicious war in Ukraine and was innocently riding the metro in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was brutally ambushed by a mentally deranged lunatic. The perpetrator was a well-known career criminal who had been previously arrested and released on cashless bail in January a total of 14 times. What the heck was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need to be locked up!" Exclamation point. That's Donald Trump, the President of the United States, in his words right there. And we'll talk about this in a bit, but he brings up the poignant point of why is he roaming the streets? Why wasn't he prosecuted? If he was arrested 14 times, what was he doing riding the train? What was he doing on the streets? And I'm actually, just aside, I'm grateful and I'm glad that Donald Trump is bringing light to this situation, because if I am recalling correctly, I believe that he still hasn't said a word about Austin Metcalf and his killing back in, what was it, May? Early June, when Austin Metcalf was brutally murdered as well, stabbed in the neck, or stabbed in the heart by Carmelo Anthony at a track meet. I don't think there's been a statement yet on that, but I guess I can be grateful that Donald Trump is bringing light to this now. And so that's from the horse's mouth. That's from Donald Trump. And I wanted to share another little perspective right here, Elon Musk's perspective, that garnered hundreds of thousands of likes. So it's a quote tweet from the tweet following Xavier DeRousseau saying, "So let me get this straight. A bartender can go to prison for serving drinks to a drunk person if they drive and murder somebody. But judges aren't accountable for letting a 14-time repeat offender murder a young woman." As you can see, that's a picture of Iryna Zarutska and her killer right there, with his numerous and multitudinous, that's not even a word, but you get the picture, mugshots taken over the years. Again, following that same sentiment that Donald Trump had, what is this dude doing on the street? If he's been prosecuted so many times, why did these judges let him out? Why isn't this dude being thrown behind bars and left to rot? Especially if we know that he is capable of committing violence, if he brought a deadly weapon to a robbery. Anyway, we have Elon Musk's response here saying, "Let's change the law, period. Between now and then, name and shame the DAs and judges who enable murder, rape, and robbery. But especially shame those who funded the campaigns of the DAs and judges. That will make the biggest difference." What's that, Elon? Is that a dog whistle? What are you saying right there? Should we go down that rabbit hole? I get what he's saying, though, and I hope that you can understand with the sentiment coming from a lot of these right-wing influencers and people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. What's going on here? Let's keep on going. Let's keep on. This rabbit hole only gets deeper and deeper. And so I like to get a different perspective. If you've seen any of my videos, I like to bring in right-wing tweets. I like to chat about them for a bit, and then I like to bring in a left-wing perspective. The difference is, in this situation, there is no defense that the left wing has as to the actions of this dude, DeCarlos Jr. There was no defense to his actions. It was completely unprovoked. It was cold-cut murder, first-degree murder. There's no defense to his actions besides saying, oh, he was mentally ill or something like that. But anyway, I found this quote from Josh Stein, the North Carolina governor, and he said he was appalled by the footage of Miss Zarutska's killing. We need more cops on the beat to keep people safe, the Democratic governor said on X, and called for the state legislature to pass a law enforcement package to address vacancies in our state and local agencies so they can stop these horrific crimes and hold violent criminals accountable. Republicans and right-wing commentators have raised questions about the role of the judicial system in the incident, including why Brown was free despite reportedly having an extensive criminal record. Now that's summarized what we've been talking about this whole time. Now, to his credit, Josh Stein is correct in saying that, yeah, we do need more police officers to hold the heat to the feet, hold the fire to the feet of these violent criminals and put them behind bars. And that's true to an extent. But the issue isn't the police officers being present or not. The issue is people being let out after they have been caught by police officers. The issue isn't the front lines, these officers arresting people. There were officers right outside the train station, right outside the train itself when this man was walking off after committing this murder. There were policemen there. They arrested him. It's if he is going to be prosecuted, and if he's going to be charged, and if he's going to receive sentencing, and if he's going to receive jail time that actually fits his crimes, and if he's going to be released or let back on the streets or left to roam and left to commit more murders. That's the real question right there. So to Josh Stein's credit, he's bringing light to this situation. I can give him that. But really, what's going on? He's not getting to the heart of the issue. It'd be good for the policemen to get more resources. It'd be good for, we saw this after the defund the police movement back in 2020 and 2021. When you take money away from the police officers, if you take money away from these systems, then they're going to slowly crumble. People are less likely to work for them, and the people that do work for them are going to be demoralized. Now we're going to get a bit meta. We're going to take a step back. We have the situation laid out in front of us, all the information that we have on it at least, which we don't have much. Right? We don't have much information. We have the video. We have the background of this dude, DeCarlos Brown Jr. We have a bit of a synopsis regarding the life of Iryna Zarutska, but even then, not very much. But what we do have is precedent to look at. There have been many events like this in the past couple months alone that point to deep rifts in our country. The first, which was being touched on lightly, is people aren't being held accountable for their actions. District attorneys and judges are letting people go free, seemingly randomly. This has been happening all over the country since COVID. Robberies under certain amounts would not be prosecuted or pursued. Sometimes the caps would be set around $900, and so if you went into Target and you took $850 worth of merchandise, they wouldn't be able to follow you. They might try to start to create a case on you, and so they could catch you stealing stuff later and then prosecute. But really, there was nothing they could do. You had massive retail chains, Walgreens, CVS, even Targets in places like Portland that were shut down. Since the pandemic, we've had riots across the country leading to the destruction of property and vandalism in the hundreds of millions of dollars. In Minneapolis alone, after the George Floyd riots, I believe there was over $500 million worth of damages. People aren't being held accountable. What is the reasoning for this? Is it radical district attorneys and judges that are just letting people go free, especially black people, because they think they're oppressed and they live under the boot of the system and should be given mercy, should be given grace, despite the horrific actions that they've committed? What is the reasoning behind it? I haven't heard a good reason as to what's going on besides the prison system's full, but it's not. Private prisons get a lot of money from these people being in their coffers. And so they should have every right to be lobbying towards these judges and district attorneys trying to get more people prosecuted and put into their chains, put into their shackles, put behind bars in their institutions. There's a lot of incentive for this system. So why are people not being prosecuted? Why are people not being put behind bars? Why are people not being put in their place and given punishments that fit their crimes? People will start, all I can say, I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't know the reasoning behind this. I have some guesses, but that's going to take a whole other video to delve into those. What I can say, I can postulate right here. I can make some hypotheses. People will start to take the law into their own hands if the social contract of the government is violated. That's an age-old philosophical question, qualm. What is the purpose of government? Many people will say, especially the libertarian types, is the purpose of government is to protect our rights. That seems like a pretty axiomatic statement right there. We give up a lot of our privileges, such as the privilege of violence and the protection of our own goods, to the government so they will protect us. We give them a monopoly of violence in the form of policemen, in the form of security, in the form of military, so they can protect us. And thus we pay taxes to support this system. And it's, that's a pretty bad simplification of what's going on of the social contract, but you get the gist. We give up stuff to the government, and in turn they protect us. They protect our rights, they protect our property, they protect our freedom. And it seems like each of those, especially in this case of somebody's life being taken with the snap of somebody's fingers, people aren't being protected. The social contract is being violated. And what happens when that's the case? Vigilantes will start to arise, and they will start to prosecute crime on their own. You saw this with Daniel Penny. You saw this with, what are some of the other biggest stories over the past half decade? You have Kyle Rittenhouse. You have people like that are going in to defend their own property, their own lives, their own freedom, their own civility with their own hands, because the government isn't going to do it. The government isn't going to step in and do it. And so that's the first thing. People aren't being held accountable. The second thing is there is a problem with black violence in the country. And I know it's 2025. That's something that you can say nowadays, and you can actually have a discussion. Somebody that had a really good rant on this, a really good dissertation, a monologue, is Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, his clips have been allowed on YouTube a lot more than they were in the past, and so I've uploaded a couple. But I still think YouTube would take down that clip if I put it up. Maybe if I added some commentary to it, I'd be able to muddy up the algorithm a bit so they wouldn't understand what's going on if I bleep some words. But there is a problem with black violence in this country. We saw it with the Austin Metcalf murder that I mentioned earlier. We saw it with Big Balls, the Doge Kid. The genius Doge Kid that translated the ancient script using AI and worked for the Department of Government Efficiency. We saw it when that kid got jumped in D.C., the catalyst for Trump sending in the National Guard to the city. We saw it with that woman in Cincinnati. I apologize, I can't remember her name. It wasn't massively promulgated, but we saw it with the woman in Cincinnati at that jazz festival being beaten by a mob back in July. These aren't isolated or rare cases. What is that, 3-4 cases in the past 4 months? This seems more like a law than it is an exception. And so what do you do about it when that's the case? We're not going to segregate communities. We can't really do that anymore. All you can do is really feel free to utilize your own freedom of association. Live in places where you want to live, around people that you want to live around. I have many black friends. They're wonderful people. They're very intelligent people. But it seems like there is some, if we're going to talk about population averages, if we're going to have an actual conversation on the subject, if we're going to be nuanced about it, it seems like there's a large population within the black community that is predisposed to violence, predisposed to low impulse control, predisposed to not being able to utilize their frontal lobe correctly. These are not isolated cases, and it's a discussion to be had. I can't dive too deeply into it. I'd love to have somebody on this little talk show that I have, and so we can discuss it. We can get a bit deeper. But, I really have more questions than answers here. And finally, it seems like the media apparatus is still trying to smooth this over and ignore this. The fire is being put to their feet, as I say. They're being poked. The squeaky wheel has indeed gotten the grease. And a lot of these mainstream media outlets are beginning to cover this story, albeit they don't even mention the fella's name. They don't even mention DeCarlos Brown Jr.'s name. They just mention Iryna. And they don't really go into the nuances of the issue, but they're still covering it finally. And so anyway, that's a long rant from me regarding the situation. I have a lot of thoughts on this, as you can tell. Leave me your thoughts in the comments. I want to leave you all with one final tweet that I think encapsulates the situation pretty succinctly. This was a tweet given by our friend Schizo Freak on X, on Twitter. And he's responding to an End Wokeness, which is like a gimmick account. I think the dude lives in India. Anyway, he says, 0 AP stories on this deadly attack. 0 PBS stories on this deadly attack. 0 New York Times stories on this deadly attack. 0 NPR stories on this deadly attack, etc. So our friend the Schizo Freak says, this is a totally unwinnable story for them. If you're a left-wing spin doctor, this is basically worst case scenario. Completely savage, unprovoked murder with zero room for debate, all on video. An obviously thuggish black perp with a zillion prior convictions let out by judges who don't believe in prison or black crime. An attractive girl slaughtered because she didn't know the secret unspoken rules about who not to sit by. A victim, literally a Ukrainian refugee who managed to escape a war only to be killed using a basic American public transit. An incident much more representative of what crime in the U.S. looks like than any recent left-wing outrage case cannot be hand-waved as a fluke. Every left-wing propagandist who touches this is doxing as a huge retard. And I agree with all of those little things right there that he spilled out. With that little enumerated list. This can't be ignored. There are no excuses for this. This isn't the Austin Metcalf situation where somebody might be able to say, oh yeah, Carmelo Anthony was actually provoked a couple minutes before this. Or Austin Metcalf actually touched Carmelo Anthony's backpack, which caused him to, defend himself. He didn't know if Austin Metcalf had a gun. It was self-defense. There is no way to spin this such that the left wing in their narrative that there's no such thing as black crime, that blacks shouldn't be prosecuted, that they're merely victims of this horrible system that has oppressed them for 400 years. There's no way to spin it in which that lands on top. So I'll leave it here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is a horrible situation. If there's more information coming out regarding this, regarding Iryna Zarutska's past, regarding our friend, the black man whose name I don't even want to mention, regarding his past, I'll let you know. I'll upload the clips, I'll upload the videos, we can have a little chat on this a bit more. Anyway, until then, leave a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.